Hi, and welcome to ZED Talks. This is the second episode of 2026, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Erica Farmer as a guest on the ZED Talk. Welcome, Erica.
Thank you, Zoe, so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
We met in this last year. We met on LinkedIn. We have a very shared passion around AI, which you're going to experience. Erica's going to talk about what Erica's doing because she's doing a lot of wonderful things. I'm a cheerleader. I always am. And because there's not many women and females that have such a passion in tech and AI, so it's always very exciting for me to have you on here and to be a buddy, really. So for the listeners, tell us a little bit about what you do, who Erica is, and what your interest is and what you're doing in the world.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I work with organisations to get their people excited and inspired and ready to innovate when it comes to artificial intelligence and future skills. So I guess this kind of journey started through my corporate L&D days when I worked for organisations like Virgin, Specsavers, British Gas and LV, typically in head of L&D roles, head of apprenticeship roles, head of talent roles, very much with that kind of educational technology golden thread. I was lucky enough to land a TEDx in 22 when I talked about reforming education with the digital first mindset. And I talked about machine learning and Bitcoin and all things kind of future technology and personalization. And then a month later, OpenAI brought ChatGPT to market. And I remember turning around to Haley, my business partner, and saying, look, we need to get more on this AI thing. This is going to be massive, especially in HR and L&D. And Haley said to me, what do we know about AI? And I said, nothing, we'll start a podcast. So we started the AI for the Average Joe podcast show, and we interviewed lots of amazing people who work with AI in education, HR, conservation, universities, coaching, setting up businesses, technology, kind of the whole shebang, really. Wow. And off the back of that, we had organizations saying, hey, I love the way you guys are making AI really practical and digestible for your listeners and your watchers. Can you come and talk to our people about that? And 4 years later, I'm now a paid professional speaker, just living the dream, working with amazing clients and sharing our experience and getting people kind of really what I call into the AI dividend, which is that personal benefit, which is different for each of us in regards to working with AI and the real difference that can make to our lives. So I'm very busy talking about all of that stuff.
I love it. I love it. And just before we kind of went on air, I was saying that that's kind of a journey that I will go on, and it's very linked to, in many ways, I think we have stories that we want to share and inspire people with, and not everyone thinks innovatively. Not everyone can see and imagine that future. And that's going to kind of lead us into our discussions about what are we seeing in practical terms in what's happening in industry, in business, in life, because there's such a blur between personal and business now. That blurred line, and AI absolutely doesn't have a preference of either one or the other. It is both and. So yeah, let's start about what you're seeing. And by the way, I love what you're doing, and I think it's really needed. And this is probably going to play out in the discussion we have, which is what is the demand and what I'm seeing. So I'd love you to share, and let's bounce some ideas about sort of what we're in response to what we're seeing. What might those ideas be to help inspire people to take a next step? Because ultimately it is about taking action, and no one can be passive about AI. I say that deliberately. You shouldn't be passive around AI because it's in everything you're doing. So you need to know about it to some extent. So yeah, I'm excited.
and you're right. AI is not a thing that's on its way. AI is already here, and it's been here for quite a long time now. I mean, actually, for the historians and the geeks among you, it was coined in 1957. The original term was. I guess people know Gen AI now because of ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, etc. But we've been using assistive technologies like Alexa and Siri for a long time now, really. So I think what I'm not seeing enough of is organizations trying to roll out adoption programs, AI enablement, AI literacy, and just treating people as tech users. And with this kind of tech, because of the history, because of the background, because of the negative press that we see, the media, only last week we were seeing horrible things about, Elon Musk's Grok, undressing pictures of females and children and all sorts. You always hear the negative stuff. That's why it's so important that we've really got to lean on the positive stuff and actually give people time and a headspace to really digest and think about how they feel about AI. Because like you said, Zoe, it's not just a work thing, it's a personal thing. Yeah. It's changing our lives, right?
Absolutely. And the thing that, so it's interesting, I've gone back to uni and I'm doing my doctorate in leadership studies. And my intention is I want to knit together the human and the machine. And so how do we live in harmony now that AI is here and it's not going to stop? And I don't know where the end game is. I'm not really sure. I'm seeing a lot of people not able to imagine what that future is with AI fully embedded. That's one of the big themes that I'm seeing. So hopefully my research, and let's be clear, I'm doing a traditional doctorate, which is 5 to 7 years. So by the end of that game, I would like to be able to have and be able to share a stage with an Erica Farmer to say, this is what research is saying. This is how we need to inspire. This is how we should be moving forward. And I imagine that that's going to be a big piece of research. Yes, the 1950s, this is not new. It's just become new because of the buzz around it. So there's so much fake news. There's so much fake news around it. So okay, so let's dig into kind of like what you're not seeing. Okay, that's a wonderful start. I'm going to tack on to the thing that I am seeing the most is lots of people cannot imagine this new world. So lots of people are asking, how do you demo? How do you show? How do you flowchart? For the visual learners, it's really, really hard to grasp the concept of, I work in HR. My job is around people. And you're suggesting that you're going to take that away from me by automating me. And I'm like, no, that's not what we're going to do. So then the next question is, well, how does that work? If I'm standing up facilitating a session and teaching, what's the component that's automatable? And I'm like, well, there isn't. That's the short answer. What we're doing is that we're taking away the task orientation around so if we talk about having a brief from somebody saying that they want a session. So I was working with somebody recently, they come to me and said, we've got 15 people in our HR team. Can you come in and teach them on Copilot? And I'm like, well, it's an LLM. It's really not Copilot we need to worry about, but it's more about the mindset and the thinking around AI.
Absolutely.
So they were like, okay, well, we can't imagine. So if we do workforce planning, for example, we need to talk to our stakeholders. How do we automate that? No, you're not going to automate that. You're going to talk to your stakeholders. What we're going to do is look at all of the past history and analyze all of the things, talk about what the end goal needs to be. And then through a set of deep questioning, which we would ask our stakeholders as well as ChatGPT or your Copilot, whatever it is. And then we're going to get some more. We need to be thinking about how we're staging this prompt, if you like, the questions to get to your end result. So all of the part outside of that can be automated. So they couldn't quite wrap their heads around it. So the only way that I am experiencing people to get a taste of it is to actually do part with them and to help them to use and to be in it. And that's just not practical for everyone. I can't do that for every client.
Yeah. And I think too many people are being given a brief by the board or the exec or, whoever it might be, have it kind of tacked onto their objectives for the year to use AI, but no one's actually asked the question, why? And what problem are we looking to solve? Yep. What difference does it need to make? There's a lot of tools first thinking, which in my opinion isn't the right way to go. Yeah. And we wouldn't do that with anything else. Like AI is just shining a light on the fact that we need to understand the problem first, whether that's, like you said, a HR problem, is that an L&D learning problem or comms problem or a leadership problem? It's like AI shining a light on our inability to perhaps answer that question at the moment. And that's where we've got to really lean into those critical thinking skills, those learning agility skills, and the things that are letting us down at the moment in regards to that AI enablement and rollout. More and more, I'm seeing, particularly in 2026, we're now towards the end of January when we're filming this, and certainly the kind of objective is 2026 is the year that we're really going to, roll out AI for our teams to become AI first and all this kind of stuff. And then you get a directive from the board to say the head of IT or transformation to say, right, everybody needs to be using Copilot. And then the IT people say, well, that's great. We'll get everybody using Copilot, say 80% within 90 days. And the 90 days comes and goes. And there's 20% rather than 80% using Copilot. And they ask the question why, and nobody's really thought about what does it mean for people and engagement. And if there's a tension there, I'm hearing AI is going to take my job. Why on earth would I put myself in a position where I'm going to learn how to use AI to take my job? It just doesn't make sense. And sometimes we just don't, to my point, we're not thinking about people as people. We're thinking them as tech users or end users or whatever it might be.
I think we're going to move into a space. My prediction is that we're going to move to so what will happen is that when this general talk of AI reduces, it will be everything around in-person proximity. Everything will switch to the human skills, which is why I'm urging anybody that's listening to this, whatever discipline you work in, my 2 invitations would be learn sales and marketing.
Okay, yeah, interesting.
Because these give you the basic skills of influencing, which I think we need to be stronger at. We can't control what anything and anyone else does. We can influence, and we can help influence with being in a certain way and understanding certain psychology that helps people to get on board. But also sales is a skill, and not everybody, HR typically aren't revenue generators. So they're not sitting at a table saying, I make money and I'm promoting our services. They're generally guard keepers, advocates, and I would say that most people, it's a hand grenade for a ton of shit that they didn't ask for. Really. So I feel like they need a little bit more skills in the future, which are going to help them to navigate more around AI and to be more human first. And sales is a thing that, to me, is a less automated thing. It's less people buy from people, and that humans' emotions and feelings haven't changed. The psychology of a human hasn't changed. Technology has, our environment has, but we as a human haven't. Our triggers and our delights and our reactions are all by our stimulus, our environment, which does create us a bit craziness when we're in this crazy world. But it is it is understanding the problem first. Let's go back to that, the problem first. So
yeah, absolutely. And we I think you're right, because we've all got that kind of fight or flight, that limbic brain, that overrides the prefrontal cortex, and you get that email that you read that's like a punch in the stomach, or somebody's rude to you, or whatever, like you said, your trigger is. And couple that with most of us having probably fairly overloaded headspace and nervous systems that are flaring up left, right and center, and then layer on the whole artificial intelligence, redundancy, job displacement, future uncertainty, ambiguity. We all know we don't like change at the best of times, but now we're being expected to live in that VUCA, BANO, whatever phrase you want to use, kind of uncertain future. And it's like, I think we just need to be a bit more kind to each other and kind to ourselves, because it's a big ask, right, what we're doing.
It is. And I had a moment a few days ago over the weekend. So my first module is all around AI and ethical considerations in this semester that I'm learning in. And at the moment, I haven't come across anything that I wasn't familiar with. And that's not to say I'm not going to, because I've got to remember that I'm probably, in my cohort at the moment, probably one of the ones that's more advanced in AI knowledge, whereas there are people that perhaps haven't even had any introductions. So I don't take it lightly that it's going to get harder and there's things that I'm going to surface. But as I was kind of like going through one of my deliverables in my study, I was thinking about which jobs AI is not going to impact. And I had a hard job doing that until I come to tradesmen and women,
Yes. Yeah.
sort of thing.
Certainly in the medium term, I guess, until we automate the
Yes.
smart home and it looks after itself. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm like, and then in the same breath, I was like, yeah, I need to put my heating on.
Yeah, exactly. Where's my hive? Yeah.
So it's almost like, you know, where does it's already, and I don't really have much tech at home, believe it or not. I have an internet connection. I don't have TV. I don't have Alexa. I've just got a phone, an iPhone and an iMac. That's it, literally. And then I realized, well, I'm actually very smart because I've got a smart heating system. I mean, everything's kind of on a timer. So, you know, maybe we don't realize quite how, you know, the human is such the instrument at the moment. And what jobs do you think will be, specifically in HR, where do you see jobs changing or not changing?
I write about this in the book, AI People Professionals, which is out in May. Shameless plug. My intro, not my forward, but my preface is, no matter what we do as a people professional, if you're L&D, HR, partnering, you're a leader, whatever it might be, we've got to get our heads out of that and get our heads into understanding that we are change architects.
Yeah,
that is our job. You might put different words on projects and titles and jobs and things, but ultimately we are there to drive change. Okay, and there's going to be no bigger change than what we are starting to get into right now.
yes.
So I think, you know, L&D in education is quite under scrutiny at the moment because of the move from the shift from education to skills. And that means we're going from a knowledge heavy requirement to a more practical skills heavy requirement. And we know that LLMs have democratized knowledge. So that's quite challenging for people that perhaps have relied on or had power through deep knowledge. University educators, for example,
Yes.
tutors, teachers, trainers, you know, who prefer to tell rather than facilitate, for example. To your point earlier, it's going to shift more towards that facilitation of human experience. Andy Lancaster talks very passionately about learning communities and people communities where a lot of the learning is potentially automated, or you have the AI tutors, you can role play with LLMs now, for example, and practice a skill. But actually the real beauty and what we will crave, probably more than anything, will be that time together as humans. So I think we probably need to get our heads out of our asses a little bit when it comes to HR, L&D, skills, education, kind of wherever we are, and recognize that everything's going to change, but the currency, the real credibility will come with that human to human, just like it did after the pandemic. You know, we had that kind of virtual conferences, virtual training, virtual this, and then so many people just couldn't wait to ping back, to be in a room with other people, rightly or wrongly. We all have our own preferences. And now we find a kind of steady balance. But I think now with AI automating quite a lot, changing quite a lot, it's really going to be down to our mindset, our preferences, how willing we are to change and really take on that change architect type persona going forwards.
I totally concur with that. And I think that actually the role of HR, well, so first of all, this may be a very unpopular comment I'm about to make. First of all, HR needs a massive upgrade. It needs to be disbanded, and it needs to be in my world and in my point of view, the future of AI is architecting the organizational structure.
Yeah.
Leave comms to marketing, leave finance to finance, legal to legal, payroll to payroll, like finance, like stop doing all of the other stuff. Like get really real about how do you create and architect an operating model where people and processes can truly harmonize. That's going to require a different skill than it is today. And so we need to better managers at dealing with people. Now, this is not a new thing. This is a systemic problem that we've always had. I have for 30 years in business. And I honestly think that, and I've always sat in a CPO role and been told, shave millions off your budgets. Where's that first? L&D. Where does it go first? Salaries and benefits, people. And I'm like, so we are cutting off our noses to spite our face by cutting off our supply and our resources of managers. Oh, what's happened? I've got fireworks. Oh, hello to the fireworks. See, I've got like
HR gremlins coming to get you.
absolutely. I'm like, I'm being put in the dog. Stop! Don't talk. But I do think that there is space for a new, and it won't be called HR. It will be called people, because people are people, and it's not going to be just about employees. It's going to be about vendors. It's going to be about clients. It's going to be about customers, because people are people, and we are all shades of all colours. But I think that there is something that needs to radically change in the HR world. That's what I think, and I believe that we're going to be forced to do that. That's why I believe that we need different skills like sales, marketing, even finance to a degree. We need to be smarter. And in fact, an HR person should be a prime CEO, because they've got all the skills that encompass everything that should go into a CEO office. That's my belief, right? So, and years to come, I'll eat my pudding or my dinner, or something else in relation to that. But I do see that the world needs to change dramatically, and I acknowledge that we are quite stuck as a HR profession. I say that because I read profiles that say they're commercial, they're creative, they're not the ordinary HR. Everyone sounds like everyone else. And I'm like, well, who's the change catalyst? To your point, the change architect. That's going to be the job, to organize and create that, and the way that business can ebb and flow and move. I really do. I believe that.
I'm 100% with you, Zoe, and I've been on some conversations recently with some very lovely, well-intended HR people who, set up initially the intention to have a conversation on what does HR of the future look like, and you end up in a conversation about how excited they are to be using note takers on webinars, for example, and you think, gosh, really? Or how, it's been able to write a new starter induction manual or whatever it might be. And I get really frustrated because the data's there. We should be looking at the data and the information. For example, the report that came out end of 2025, beginning of 26, that said, actually the biggest use case, the most people that were using Microsoft Copilot in 2025 wasn't for writing emails and reports. It was for mental health and well-being support. Yeah. That's what most people use Copilot for in 2025. And if you put that as a list of stuff on a poll and you put that in front of 100 CTOs or IT leads or HR leads or CPOs or name your role, I guarantee that wouldn't have come out as number one kind of prospective use of AI across that year. So what does that mean? That means we've got a big issue around not just people being able to access mental health support, but people are going to large language models because it feels familiar and we can talk to it and we can access it in the moment. And do you know what? That's not a bad thing. If we're using AI in the right way because we're feeling a bit anxious because we've got a difficult conversation coming up and we want to role play a few things, or we want to practice some words, or we want to practice a presentation, or we might need some signposts, some resources, some breathing techniques, for example. All of that stuff is great. But what we can't accept, and we've seen unfortunately over the other side of the pond, when things go really, really bad for people because there isn't the safeguards around mental health, people taking their own life and being egged on by ChatGPT, etc. When there's more bad days than good days, we've got to be looking out for that as well. We cannot trauma dump into large language models. The BBC said last week 75% increase of people trauma dumping into LLMs because they don't have the right safeguards around them to say, I recognize that you're now starting to talk about something that you probably don't want to be talking about. Let me stop you there. Let me get you some help. They're not designed to do that yet. So that, for me, is a bigger conversation that HR should be having around people's well-being and mental health. Why can't they access employee assistant programs? Why can't they even have a decent conversation with their line manager about how they're feeling? It's just that, like you said, these things are bigger problems and they're systemic. But again, AI is shining the light on this stuff. And for me, HR people really need to get with the game when it comes to AI because there's bigger fish to fry.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that I'm having to make a note because I'm like, don't forget. This is also a little bit menopausey that I forget sometimes what I'm talking about. So, it might.
So absolutely all right. Absolutely all right. Again, most of us, we've got so much on our plate, whether it is menopause. I'm menopausal. I'm on the old HRT, turn my grey hair blonde, for example. Running companies, running, functions, the mental load of the family, the partner, whatever it might be. People have really got to start thinking about this stuff. And it's actually quite difficult when we are walking a tightrope of so many other different things at the same time.
It's so true. And what come to my mind is, so I did a talk a few years ago now, and the topic was around, is HR ready for spiritual inclined culture? And what do I mean by that is, spirituality for me is, and I'm a transpersonal psychologist. So for anyone that doesn't know that is a transpersonal psychologist is somebody that studies the esoteric and the metaphysical. So traditional psychology, where I started, is about cognition, it's about matter, it's about all sorts of things, and then the opposite side of that is everything not that. It's the opposite, everything energetic, vibrational, all of that, imagination, all sorts of things. And I looked at the mental health statistics. So this was probably 2023, and I think that I looked at Mind, World Health Organization, Office of National Statistics, and I got very curious about birth rates as well, and like reproduction. And so, and the causes of mental health. So I went sort of very broad strokes and sort of thought, how do you combat all of this? Because it's a much bigger problem. A third of people, people spend a third of their life in a workplace or some kind of work facility, whether it's physical or emotional, mental, right? They're at work a third of their lives. And so we've got a responsibility in the workplace, wherever that workplace is, to create environments where it is safe, and to help people on that journey, because we're all carrying something. And at that time, I think the biggest mental health labels, as you were, no one wants to be labelled, but if you put them into categories, loneliness and PTSD were the top kind of contributors of poor mental health. So my route of going, and this AI just started to become a bit more present in my mind, because there was so much more access to it, even though we weren't fully talking about ChatGPT. It was something on my mind of like, how do you create these tools that are safe? I do worry about the safety of ChatGPT and people, because of its hallucination, because of it, and it's getting all better. But I think that there's some way to go in order to help that. But there is a direct neon sign saying it's needed. And so those mental health statistics have got worse, not better. And so that makes me kind of go, okay, well, how do you start to combat this? Like, so my route would go now is opposite of AI. So if I want to improve mental health, I would start to talk about mindfulness, meditation, journaling, somatic embodied experiences that help us connect with emotions, because we can't heal something, whether it's a trauma, until we feel it. And that's sitting in that emotion of. So typically we have to feel to heal, and to feel it is often very painful. And actually, I don't think anyone should do that alone. They have to be guided by somebody that's highly trained. So there is a worry for me around using, and me too. I'm a diabetic, so I put all my test results, all my, I'm a chunky girl, I need to lose a bit of timber, and all of that stuff. And of course, I do put it into ChatGPT and say, right, help me create a plan, all that good stuff. So it does have uses, but I'm always on that tender point of what's the tightrope, like what's the line is so thin. And I think if you are vulnerable in your mind, then here is the problem, because you're so much more suggestible and influenced, I think, when you are in maybe a point of desperation, or looking and searching for someone to help you to get out of that dark space or dark spot. And I think there's a lot of people that this would apply to.
Yeah. And we know that AI is a people pleaser. How many times you put something in and it says, great question. I'm like, oh, stop it. Stop telling me it's a great question, because it's not a great question, but like it's like the algorithm, right? You know, it's like you want to buy something, you search it, and then all you see then is adverts for that thing, whether you bought it or not, right? And it's like, stop it, I've bought it, stop advertising it to me. There's all sorts of things like that. And it AI is the same. If you go looking for something, it will present it for you and put it in
Yeah.
front of you, but it won't necessarily give you, unless you specifically know how to prompt it. And this is why
Yes.
AI literacy is so important.
Yes.
It won't give you the opposite point of view. It won't give you another option. It won't say, hang on, I think you're wrong. You might want to go and consider this instead, unless you're specifically asking it to be a thought partner and play a devil's advocate in your decision making or something like that. So when we talk about AI literacy and enablement and training and being able to use these technologies, it's so much wider than the conversation around efficiency and productivity.
Yeah.
And even innovation, although innovation's the unlock for profitability, it's about this. It's about people engaging with technologies that we've never seen this before. And we walked into the internet, we walked into social media, and we're now seeing, Australia's unpicked that in regards to, under 16s not being able to have access to social media, and probably will go down the same route in the UK potentially. So, we need to be so up on this. We need to be having conversations, and we need people to step up and not have conversations about, bloody rewriting emails on Copilot. We need to be, to your point, really thinking about, stepping up and understanding, what does this mean culturally for us as adults, for our children, for the workplace, for the home. It's all of this stuff, and people need to be educated about that. And this kind of ignorance is bliss piece it's just not acceptable anymore for so many different reasons.
Well, I mean, it's a blessing and a curse, isn't it? In the pandemic, lots of people pivoted their skills to sell their knowledge. That's what they did. Like, as in coaching programs, let me tell you what I know, and they capitalized. That's what always the worry is for me, is that always there's a bit of money to be made here.
Yeah.
And that is always a bit of a concern when something shiny and new comes out. Like, how do I exploit it, make a shit ton of money, and then kind of, I don't really care what the contribution is from my end. I've got money out of it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people. So I'm absolutely fascinated by TikTok and Instagram. People going like, just use these prompts. Like, this is the best prompt of all. You just need this, just copy and paste it. And I've got the secrets to making sure that this never hallucinates. And, it's all clickbait. There's a lot of clickbait.
It's a load of rubbish.
And I mean, I have to laugh. I mean, I feel a bit responsible sometimes, because I'm like, you shouldn't be doing that. But then I think, well, who are you, Zoe, to be saying who should and shouldn't, So I suppose there's anyone listening to our discussion is, people have to be protected at all costs. The human is the greatest intelligent species, and Absolutely. It always will be. And we need to make sure that we continue to create those environments where the human can flourish, and that AI is a support mechanism for enablement to have more fulfilling experiences in person. That's the be all and end all for me. I mean, I don't know in my lifetime that I'm going to see. Let's go there. What do you think? I'm 51, so I'm not a dinosaur, but I'm not. It's not. I'm not youth. I don't. What do you think I can expect to see in my lifetime with AI? What do you think?
It's interesting, because it's like the experience we've had up until now, right? So we know that computing power is it's doubling every year. It was doubling every year now we're kind of into exponential growth when it comes to computing, because of like quantum computing and things like that.
Yes.
So the progress that we've made from the Industrial Revolution has been, you can count it in 50-year segments, right? And the kind of progress that we've seen has been quite slow, from the loom to the machine to, how clothes are made now, for example. So, yes. and that's just going to speed up really, really quickly now because of the technology. So no longer can we count these kind of 50-year chunks where we're going to keep progressing slowly. It's going to go quicker and quicker and quicker. And I'm not saying that we're all going to be plugged into the Matrix in 10 years' time. My favorite movie of all time, by the way, The Matrix. But I do feel like whether, already we've got smart glasses that can heat map and give us a recommendation of where we should eat within, a 500-yard radius, and we don't even have to say anything. It just heat maps what we've been looking at in regards to content or restaurants as we've been walking down the road, and it anticipates our needs. So there's this kind of emerging technology, this wearable technology, all of this kind of stuff where we're going to have things recommended to us left, right, and center in anticipation. And I think we are going to have that going back to things like critical thinking and independent thought, and having the boundaries of where the technology is going to support us and where it's going to be like make us damn lazy when we're just sat in a chair. Is it Wall-E, that film where everybody's just in chairs with like big iPads in front of them and they don't even get out the chairs, they just move around and stuff like that? Like, if we're not careful, that we're going to end up as big blobs kind of plugged into computers,
Yes. Yeah, that's the physiological impact of, not moving. And
we've already got that with our humpbacks and our forward slouching and our bad posture and our repetitive strain. We already have the start of this stuff.
And, I walked into a pub Christmas Eve, maybe a few years ago, might have been before COVID. In fact, my nephew must have been, he's 23 now, so maybe it was probably about 7 or 8 years ago. Yeah. And I noticed, so there's all the kids, all my friends and my sister and her friends and kids, there's about 20 kids, all got glasses on, all like this on a phone, already glasses on, already going to have arthritis probably by the time they're 30. Already got significant pain in shoulders, and like, I worry also about that. That worries me.
Yeah.
And I think, where are the days? And of course, I'm going to sound a bit old now. Oh my God, I'm going to sound really old. Kids be encouraged to be out in nature. Nature is the intrinsic thing that keeps us connected to ourselves and to our planet, because there is synergy. It's nature. Nature is that governing thing. We're born out of nature. We're a natural process. And we have a natural process going on inside us as an ecosystem. We feel, whether it's conscious or not, we feel more at home when we're in nature. And I don't think that we have enough time outside. We're so inside and so consumed by, and I was in Thailand recently, as you know, I'm watching at airports and places where parents are, and the minute the child cries or there's a problem, and I'm not critiquing parents, by the way, because it's bloody hard bringing up kids, right? But the first thing is, give them the phone, give them the laptop, the iPad, give them the device. And we're making that. So I think I'm going to come on to a bit of Gen Z and Alpha. Gen Zers, I'm going to skip around the place a little bit because I've seen this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gen Zers also, we think that they are quite disconnected and entitled. I don't think that. I think that they are brought up in an environment which creates a standard, and they do want a sense of belonging. They want to be in workplaces, but they don't want to do it without purpose. They're looking for fulfillment. It's a very misunderstood generation, certainly from an X and certainly from an Xer. My business partner is a Zeder, so I'm so lucky that I have that diversity in thought. But what kind of workplaces do we need to create for Z and Alphas? What do you think?
Yeah, I get asked this question a lot, particularly when it comes in the frame of early careers, right? So people who are, graduates, apprentices, interns, that kind of generational, kind of new to the workplace. Because if we're going to automate a lot of those entry-level roles that typically a lot of younger people would come into, administration, learning, etc., what does that mean for where their entry point becomes?
Yes.
And if it's first level management, for example, how do you train people to be managers if they've never had the opportunity to manage? So again, that's quite an interesting challenge for HR and L&D for that perspective. And is it that we just take the jump and put people into management roles and give them all the coaching that managers should have when they're in a role? But just because you're experienced or not experienced doesn't make you a great manager. It's more about mindset, right? People who want to lead other people and want to manage other people and put people at the heart of those decisions, rather than it's just the next jump on the pay scale, which it is for most people.
I'm wondering how Google do this. I work with Google. So I was at Adidas for a time, and I was very fortunate to lead their digital evolution, which was probably one of the proudest and biggest things I've ever done in my career. And so I got the fortune to work directly with Google people and Lego, believe it or not.
Brilliant.
And because of their innovative, their pioneering, and one thing that always stuck with me, and I've never worked directly for Google, so don't shoot me if you're from Google and I've got this wrong, is that they hire for Googliness. They don't hire in any particular management role. It's the longest, so they're a very fast-paced company, but their longest process is hiring. There's about 7 rounds.
7 rounds.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you are never hired at a manager level. You are hired into the organization, and you are hired principally on 2 things. One is your learning agility. The second one is Googliness, i.e. your mindset, as in, are you a growth mindset? Are you a fixed mindset? And can you deal with ambiguity? How do you thrive in change? Because change is a constant, right? So they look for people who can be in ambiguity. They learn very quick. So therefore, their belief was, if you can learn very quick, you can learn anything quick. We'll bring you in, and then we'll assign you and promote you within to where we see your learning trajectory. And I think that that's very smart, because they had quite a flat organization. So there wasn't the hierarchical bollocks that you normally get with, being at this, you're a M1 or a S3, or you're a, whatever code your IP banding is, and what grading you use. I liked it. I don't know where they are today, because this was a few years ago. So if anyone's listening, I'd love a bit of an update. I wonder how they deal with this, because they've been dealing with innovative technology for a while. And
they're one of the main leaders in this space. And someone was saying to me the other day that because of the pre-work that Google has done around their own data centers, managing data, where they built what was Google Bard, now Google Gemini, in a very different way compared to how other large language models were built. So, just to get geeky, ChatGPT and Copilot were built from text. Bard and Gemini were built from imagery and other more creative sources. So the fact that I'm not surprised in what you're saying, because that mindset and ability to deal with uncertainty, that open mindset, this is the stuff we try and teach people all the time. So if you're hiring for that straight from the off, like, you can correlate that with where Google is as an organization, can't you?
I think so. I mean, I've always said that I wouldn't, it would take a lot for me to go back into a corporate environment. Google would be one of them. Probably Salesforce would be another. Machine wise, their founder is actually very spiritual, and that's what attracts me to, and how they've been so successful in a spiritually inclined culture, because even though it is a shark, it has to be, it's got 100,000 people, right? And I wonder how they do things in terms of how they hire and promote, and what basis they do that on, because to me, that's all an indicator of how successful you'll be. Your people are your biggest asset. They're the most expensive asset that you have too. And so to not get that right, I think is fascinating. But I think Google, and I'm going to come on to Notebook LM. Do you use Notebook LM?
Yes, fantastic, fantastic tool. Yeah,
I didn't love it. Like, I've been a Googler for, in fact, I think I made the switch from Microsoft in, I want to say probably 2017, maybe 2016, 2017. So it's been many years. I mean, it's not that I don't use Microsoft. I just don't like it. It's not my preference. I like the fact is that Google is so collaborative. But anyway, the Notebook LM, for anyone listening, is a closed environment where you can create and simulate an LLM in many ways, but it's based on the information that you put into it. And it's still in beta phase with Google. But it's got phenomenal functionality now. You can create almost like podcast style. Basically, you upload your documents and it will give you a podcast style about the contents. You can also create a presentation from it, from learning. There's an L&D path that you can take to help people learn. So it's a phenomenal tool that can be used. And I see that's going to, I'm not sure how long it's going to be in beta. I don't know. And I'm wondering what that next step will be, but it's certainly something that is so good. So good for many reasons. And I think HR teams, if they're on Google, I'm like, the first thing I'll teach you is how to create your own environment, which is safe to use because it's in your domain. I love Notebook LM. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's great. We did an episode in season 3 of AI for Average Joe about Notebook LM, and it was, I think, the most watched episode of that season because people were just so excited about it.
Yeah, I think that there's some wonderful things going to come out of that, and I mean, I can't keep a handle on every single, like you, and that's a good thing for us to also compare, because we're looking at different things and what my clients typically are looking for, because our clients are SMBs, so they're typically small businesses, micro team. They need, so what they need is client acquisition, demand generation, as well as getting paid. So the delivery part's in the middle, and we help build that so that can help them be out of feast or famine. Because if you're a young business, you typically got time, no money, money, no time. So we try to look at the balance of that, of how do you deploy your services using smart AI solutions, but less is more. And so we want to be able to build things where it's natural to use tools that can be really leveraged, like a Notebook LM. And then we've got other SMEs, which are, there's already an architect and infrastructure already in place that things have got to plug into, because lots of companies don't have one data source now. They've got multiple data sources that compete with each other that aren't clean. And that's a real problem. You've got to clean this up first. AI is not going to clean it for you. You have to decide what your data looks like or needs to look like, and then we can start to clean it. And yes, there might be some AI tools that can do that, but it's got to start with the human architect first. What do we want? What problem are we solving? What's the outcome? Going full circle back to that problem solving, like why are we doing this? And so there's a lot of great solutions that are coming out, but how do you keep a handle on what is like really coming up? How do you stay abreast? I don't know how you do it. I struggle. It's popcorn style for me, but I see something, I'm like, I'm going to go on that train and understand about that. I'm into Claude Code at the moment.
Okay.
And vibe coding, which is, I'm a bit late to the game, but how do you stay stuff?
Just by talking to people, really. Like I have a lot of conversations with people. I learn something new every time I speak to somebody. I probably spend far too much time reading posts on LinkedIn and clicking through to people's blogs and vlogs and all that kind of stuff, and also trying to share my own thought leadership as part of that as well. So I think it's important for us to, abundance mindset and all that stuff, kind of share what you hear, share. That's why we did that's why we did the podcast show as a show, not just as an audio, so we could screen share and show people and demo. And really that's why we set up the podcast show, really was to disseminate practical knowledge and skill when it came to AI. So just all of the above, really.
Do you have a preference of like where you well, does it have an impact? So are you mobile first or desktop first or something else
Desktop
first?
Yeah, so because we work from home quite a lot, and we have we tend to use gaming PCs because they're more powerful than kind of the average laptop and stuff like that. And they tend to last a lot longer as well, a decent PC. So so for quality, for super fast broadband, decent cameras, you can have all that stuff, but you've got to have a pretty decent PC to do all the heavy lifting. So we do it with that.
This is something I learned recently, right? So I'm going to share it with anybody that this might be a little hack. So one of my reasons why I have my own business is because I want freedom. I left home at 20. I went to work on cruise ships. I worked around the world. And it's been a big part of my life, travel has. And I realized that as I travel, it's not just about the glamour of travel, but it helps me to be creative. It helps me to formulate decisions. It helps me to have a variety of perspectives. It gets me to challenge and question a lot naturally. Is what I know the right thing? It challenges everything I know. And on that reason, I like to travel and I like to work. So now we have the fortune that we can travel and work. So if this is up your street and floats your boat, then pay attention. So I went to Barbados a few years ago and I had a major study. So I was doing my master's at the time. I needed to do a major, I needed to present, my whole dissertation, and it's marks. So it's a marked piece of delivery. And also I was working and I checked with the hotel and said, have you got internet? They said, yeah. Oh yeah, we've got internet. I was like, fantastic. I got there and I could almost hear the modem dialing up.
It's like AOL in the 90s, isn't it?
I was like, so anyone that's traveling, you need to go to your provider, the hotel that you're staying at, and you need to ask, do you have a high speed internet? This is the foundation, right? You have to ask that question, because if you don't,
and I think
you may be stuffed when you get there, like I was. And that wasn't particularly great, I can tell you. Now, we've lost Erica for a second. She's probably going to come back in. She might have lost power, but that was a really interesting topic. Now, I always take this as a bit of a sign that, you know, there's forces at play that are helping us to end a conversation or to move the conversation on. So maybe in some woo way, which I firmly believe in, even though I work in AI, maybe one of that. But I'm curious about, as you listen to this, what things are coming up for you around AI and how you are integrating AI in your world. Where are you getting inspired and educated? Where are you sitting and looking, and where are you going to get that information? Who are you learning from? We'd really love to know that, because, you know, Erica and I are people that work in AI specifically. We do have a lot of information and education and knowledge about this particular thing, but that doesn't mean to say that we know everything. So we're always looking to learn and evolve and bring things forward that will help others be inspired and innovated to take their AI journey. And as we started this conversation, and sadly Erica's not here for us to, you know, maybe we can do a finishing at some point. You know, AI is here and it's something you are using, even if you think you aren't, you are. And so to embrace it rather than be carried along by it is really the best advice I can give everyone. You have to use AI and you have to use it responsibly, because like everything, there is duality. And so, you know, like with social media, there's a great side to it, there's a dark side. And like everything, there's a polarity in that duality. So we need to be really thinking about how we use AI ethically and what reason we're using it for, that intention that Erica said at the beginning. And I endorse that. As a company, that's what we do. We look to make sure that we understand the problem that we're solving and what the required outcome is. That is the basis. So I think it's time for me to wrap up, but I really appreciate you being here, and Erica will watch this, and thank you, Erica, for being a guest on today's show. I really enjoy what you have to say. You're definitely somebody that I admire in this space, and I can't wait to see what else you do. If you want to connect with Erica, her details will be at the bottom in the description. And if you want to ask us any questions, you can. Until next time, take care of yourself. From ZED Talks. Bye.